Welcome to Rebecca Sounds Reveille. What an exciting show do I have for you today, because with me, I have guest Joe Alves, and he is an author, animator, draftsman, illustrator, set designer, art director, production designer, and director. You may know him with 18 credits to his name. He's most notably known him for his work on Close Encounters of the Third Time, Jaws 3D, along with Escape from New York, and much more. His work is absolutely very well known. He's an incredible man with a lot to tell. He's had two major awards, two major award nominations. One of his awards was an Oscar in 1978 for Best Art Direction Set Decoration for his movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Welcome to the show, Joe Alves.
Okay, how are you?
I am so excited for you to be here, because what an incredible man you are, with what incredible talent that you have given, and it has been just memory etched into the minds of millions with the work that you have done. I am so excited for you to be here. That's how I'm doing today.
Well, that's good. Well, where do we start? You mentioned the books, the movies, and of course, Jaws, and then there's a book out called Designing Jaws, Joe Alves, Designing Jaws.
Yes, I want to not forget that either.
Yeah, and anyway, I could start with that, and anybody that's interested in the movie, it's a good explanation on how a movie develops, not how it's directed or acted, but how you start from sketches and storyboards, and how you get technical people and you build a shark and so forth. So to start off with, and that's available on joealvesmovieart.com, along with the storyboards. But if we want to go way back, Jaws obviously was a big one, and I'll talk about that later. But if we want to start at the beginning, I would say, when I was a kid, I was always interested in art. I always drew from the time I was fourth grade. I drew all the dwarfs, and then the teacher put them up on the wall. The Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Yes.
But Rebecca, the thing that really started, because an interesting thing happened to me this week. I got a call, an email from the Art Directors Guild. And every year, the last 25 years, they've had an award show where they give out for best production design of a movie, best art direction of a television, best illustration, best, etc. But they also put out every a year a Lifetime Achievement Award for your work over your lifetime. And I am very fortunate that they're going to give that to me this year.
I'm so excited. I have chills.
They sent me the letter. I've got the people here that have who have gotten it, like Sir Kenneth Adams. Ken Adams did all the Bond movies, and there's part, Richard Silbert and Dean Tavaleris, who did the Godfather movies, and it just goes on. These great designers, Tony Walton, and now I'm sort of shocked that I'm going to be put in that category. And it's interesting because basically I've been retired for 20 years, so you don't think about the past. It just happened, and I do these shows, and I sell the book, and I sell my drawings from Jaws and stuff. But I was shocked, and so it's sort of a real compliment. But
It
made me
is.
think about, the beginning, how it all started. And I can give you that story if you're interested.
Yes, and congratulations. I'm so excited for you. I want to hear how this started for you.
Well, when I was in high school, I remember this. Grew up in a little town, Hayward, California, which is sort of in the Bay Area, east of Oakland. It was a small town. They had one theater, and I remember I was probably 13, 14 years old, and went down to with a neighbor girl, Shirley, and we walked down to the theater probably early evening, and we saw American in Paris. And I was just elated by the movie, and came back and we were dancing in the street. And then as I researched, I found out they never made the movie in Paris. The whole movie was made on the back lot at MGM and in the sound stages. And I discovered that Cedric Gibbons and Preston Ames were the art directors. And I thought, oh my gosh, how do they do that? Who are they? What are they, how do I get there? That's what I want to do. And so that's sort of the start of the whole process of learning, how do I get into the movie business? How do I become an art director or a set designer or whatever the route was that you had to take. And so eventually I did a year at San Jose State and majored in architecture and minored in drama because I was always interested in drama. And I used to direct a show in high school, senior extravaganza and stuff. So anyway, and then I kept thinking as I drove to the school, there was a sign that said Los Angeles. And I said, I got to make that turn someday and go down to Los Angeles and get in the movie business. And eventually, I was still young. I graduated high school at 17. I made the turn. I went down and I found an art school called Chenard's Art Institute, which they had classes in motion picture design. So that's what happened. I studied architecture and illustration, and that was the beginning. So, but I didn't. I got a summer job at Walt Disney's. I thought it would be a summer job because I knew somebody that worked there, and it was a friend of mine's wife's father. Well, he did the hiring, and he said, "Well, bring your portfolio." And I said, "Oh, I don't think I'm ready." I was only just turned 19, I think. And he said, "Oh, we'll bring it." So anyway, I go there with the portfolio, and he said, "Well, you're too late for the training program. They draw Mickey Mouse." And so I could put you in special effects, And it was just unbelievable. I got in this room, and there's a board with a light on it, and the lady said, "You just flip the pages and draw in between." And I said, "Okay, I could do that." Anyway, Rebecca, long story short, she had to leave. She was working for Dwight Carlisle, who was assisting Josh Mehta, who was the king animator. He did Night in Bald Mountain, and he did Fire in Bambi. And he was working on a picture for MGM called Forbidden Planet, and they were drawing this id. And through circumstances, it generally takes 3 or 4 years to become an assistant animator.
Okay.
Dwight had to go to the hospital. I ended up assisting this guy after 2 months and drawing the id for Forbidden Planet. Mm-hmm. And so I'm at Disney, and I'm doing Sleeping Beauty, and I just have to tell you this, and then we'll move on. And I'm designing. One of the fairies are holding a cookie, and this guy reaches over me and corrects the drawing. He said, "No, the cookie should look," and it's Walt Disney. And he used to come and walk around and correct drawings. So you call him Walt. You didn't call him Mr. Disney. So I said, "Well, thank you, Walt." Anyway, that was my beginning in the movie industry, and it was a long time ago. So.
This is incredible. Now, you also went to USC to study as well, didn't you?
While I was at Disney, I started taking classes at SC in motion picture effects and in various because I was still going to school at night, and when I could squeeze it on the weekends to Chenard's, and then I started taking classes in the motion picture department at USC. But I really wanted to get into live action. So after a couple of years of Disney, a friend of mine that I had gone to college with, he had directed a play in college that I was in. He was a senior and I was a freshman. He was in the service. He came back and we were rooming together, and he started directing at this little theater, the Hollywood Playhouse. And so I started designing the sets for the Playhouse, and I built up a portfolio of illustrations and drafting. And then I went around and I got my first job as a set designer. And you start off as a junior, and you're the last to be hired, first to be fired, because there's these, there was like 5 or 6 major studios, MGM, Paramount, Warner Brothers, etc. And there would be a big picture, like I was at MGM when they're doing Mutiny on the Bounty, and I went there and I was drawing details of boats and stuff. And then that would finish, and you'd go to Fox and do something. So you get knocked around. I was at Warner Brothers and was drawing on My Fair Lady and stuff. So you get an experience, and then eventually you become a senior set designer.
Okay.
And I landed at Universal, and I worked on this Mad World for months and months. And so that becomes your home, and you become sort of staff. And it's not that way anymore. All that broke up in the 70s. But that's how it used to be, And then I was fortunate to become assistant art director. And I'll never forget this, because I was working with this art director, Frank Arrigo, who really helped me tremendously how to think about designing. And we were working on a picture called Torn Curtain with Alfred Hitchcock.
Ooh.
So I remember Hitchcock, the production designer and art director, were away someplace, and his secretary, Peggy, called me and said, Mr. Hitchcock wants to see you. And I said, really, me? Because, you call him Mr. Hitchcock, not Hitch. He's pretty well established, he's a big director. They didn't get any bigger at that time. So he calls me in his office and he says, Joe, I want you to build these stairs. Mr. Newman runs down the stairs and Mr. Whitlock would do the mat shot. Then he comes over to the registration desk and he leaves. And I said, okay, so how about the other side of the set? Do I build it? No, you just build what I tell you. Because he never wanted to waste money. He just build what I'm going to need. Unlike a lot of directors that want everything. Well, no, because Hitch used to be an art director, so he would plan his shots so that we would just build what we would see, which
Interesting. Okay.
That was quite different. There's only a few directors that I've worked with that were that way. Most of them want build me everything and then I'll decide what I'm going to shoot,
Okay.
So the pre-planning was to do storyboards, to do layouts, and then he knew what he wanted. Another director I worked with was similar to that, was John Carpenter. I did Escape from New York with John, and he was very cost conscious because he did very, very low budget pictures. But in any case, as it moves on, as working with Hitchcock and I was an assistant. Then I became a full art director. And what happened at that time, Universal was bought by Revue, which was a television studio. And Lou Wasserman was the president, and he came into Universal, and they started taking over Universal. So there was a lot of television now at Universal, and there were still the feature people, but there was a transition that you could make this jump to art director on television easier than on features because there's more television. And I was very fortunate to get a series called Night Gallery with Rod Serling.
Yes.
And on Night Gallery, I met this young director by the name of Steven Spielberg. I guess you guys have heard about him.
Oh, yes.
And yeah. And so Steven and I worked together on a few television shows. And And then I did his first movie called Sugarland Express. And that was his first theatrical film.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did Jaws together and then Close Encounters together.
So let me ask you, when it goes into the set design and making all of this, actually putting it into fruition, it takes a long time to go from the idea to drawing the illustration and then actually creating whatever the object or scene it is.
I'll give you a good example because this is sort of unusual for a production designer or art director. But yes, it generally takes a while. It depends on the size of the picture, the money. It depends. On television, I used to do like 20 sets a week on Night Gallery, and so you grab whatever is standing, whatever you could steal, not steal, but you borrow from another show, whatever you build, and that was frantic. That was just, I really learned a lot how to show a director, well, we have this corner, if you could do the scene in that corner because this other side isn't finished and blah, blah, blah. So you really learn quickly how to read a script and then materialize what it should look like. And if it's television, the director doesn't have that much input because he doesn't have time. If it's a Night Gallery where he's doing just a 20-minute show or half-hour show, so you sort of lay it out to him, does this work for you? And so that gave me a lot of experience. And then working on Sugarland Express with Stephen, we became pretty close. And that one was pretty much a road picture. We drive around and find some interesting locations and stuff. So that one we didn't build so much. Jaws is quite different. Jaws is different in this respect. Stephen wasn't on the movie at the beginning.
Okay.
The producers, Zanuck and Brown, who produced Sugarland Express, what happened is David Brown, whose wife was Helen Gurley Brown, and she was the editor of Cosmopolitan magazine. She had found this book called Jaws, and she said to David, this might make a good movie. And so I was a staff art director. I was working on some television movies at the time. This was after Sugarland. And he called me, and they didn't have a charge number or anything. So he said, I've got this book, and if I could send you the galley sheets, if you could draw wherever there's a shark situation in the book and do some illustrations so we could use those illustrations to sell the studio on the idea of making this shark movie.
Right.
So that was sort of unusual because there's no script. There was just the book. And Stephen wasn't assigned to it yet because at that time you got assigned, by the heads of the department. And so I started in between doing my other work on the television show because they weren't paying me. They were just, I was staff so I could fit it in when I wasn't doing my other show. So I did about 30 or so illustrations. You'll see some of them on my website. They're charcoal drawings, and they're about 16 inches, 12 by 16 inches, charcoal drawings of the shark getting the cage, the shark hitting the boat, etc. Based on the book's idea, not the script. And I would go over to Stephen and I said, oh, you got to do this shark picture. And he'd say, yeah, I was going to wanted to do a pirate movie. Anyway, the Zanuck and Brown had this other director in mind, and they didn't like him. So I think they finally decided Stephen was the guy. And so I'd been talking to Stephen because we were friends, and he had a cabana on the lot. And then we said, if we ever do this, we want to build like a big shark, 25 feet, and do it in the real ocean, not in a backlot lake and with a phony backdrop,
Uh-huh.
And so that's never been done before. And so in any case, we have a meeting with my illustrations, and all the department heads, the head of editing, the head of camera, the head of art department, and the head of special effects. And so I take the drawings, and I go, and Steven's there, and Richard Zanuck and David Brown are there, big producers. They did The Sting and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid,
Yes.
and they were really hot producers. So they were waiting to see what the studio's reaction to make this little shark movie, which nobody was too excited about, except Marshall Green, who was the head of production, sort of liked it because he lived on a boat. See, he liked the whole water idea.
Okay.
And so I did my presentation on the shark and how we needed a full-size shark, I figured 25 feet. And there's a long story about that, but I'll just jump to this. And so he looked at the special effects people and said, can you make this? And they said, well, no, it's never been done. No one's ever built a shark and shot it in the real ocean. He said it would take us probably a year and a half to develop it. Besides, we have bigger movies. We've got the Hindenburg we're doing. And Marshall got real mad and said, Jaws could be a bigger picture than the Hindenburg. And everybody sort of laughed because Hindenburg was going to be George C. Scott's big movie. And
Right.
Jaws was just this little shark movie. So the meeting broke up. I was collecting my drawings, and I started walking out. Marshall called me back, and he said, can you get the shark made? And being young, ambitious, and whatever, I said, yeah, I certainly could try. Yeah, I think I could do that. So, okay, he said, well, take it off the lot. This was unusual because everything was done on the lot. The same,
Right. Everything stayed right there.
Yeah, so they kept it all in Universal, He said, take it off the lot, find an independent thing to do it. So I was then entrusted with the idea of building a shark. And I set about looking, and I went to the Steinhardt and studied with Leonard Capagna, who was a shark expert, what the shark looked like. I made it's in the book, I made a 4-foot clay model of a white shark. And he helped me detail the things. And he said a perfect shark is about 12 feet. After that, they get really fat and girthy. He said, so a really good-looking shark would be 12 feet, and then we wanted to make it twice that size, so we doubled it 20. We made it like 25 feet. But
Okay.
It was sleek, that's how it got that shape. So anyway, here's the rub. After much research, and Disney said they would make it, but they wouldn't take it out in the ocean. And somebody else said, oh, yeah, that would take about a year and a half to make. And, so I found someone who mentioned this guy, Bob Matty, who had worked at Disney and had done this giant squid in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, a movie made in the late 50s. So I met Bob, and he was all enthusiastic. Oh, yeah, I could do it. He's about in his mid-60s. Very enthusiastic. He said, give me a couple of days. So he came back with a little wire sculpture that it would squeeze. You pull a lever, and the mouth would open and close. So, okay, we got the rights to hire him. And then I hired 6 more guys. We called it the Magnificent Seven. Roy Abergast was going to do the skin. We needed special plastic, urethanes and stuff to make this thing.
Yes.
So anyway, back to that, the whole thing that upsets me about Jaws is this. I hear the critics and they said, oh, well, the shark didn't work. The shark didn't work. They had to shoot. Well, let me tell you, that was probably November of 1973. The book came out in February of 74, and the studio said, we got to start shooting this in 2 months. So where's my year and a half to build the shark? They had 4 months, 5 months before we started shooting, and the guys were just working like crazy to and so I was working with Stephen, and I went off and found the location. I found Martha. I met with Peter Benchley and found Martha's Vineyard and all that. And so the thing is, I would say we got everything moved to the East Coast, and Bob would be testing the shark. We had 3 sharks, a right to left, left to right, because the opposite side had to be open. And then we had one on a platform that you
That
could
makes
see.
sense.
Pardon?
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So we had all this, and so then I would go to Bob, and he'd say, well, we're going to test the left to right shark, and I'd go to Stephen, and we would sit and do the storyboards. He would rough out ideas, and then I'd go back and develop them, and you see that in the book too. And I said, if it works, we shoot it. If not, it's a test. And that's basically how we made the movie. I mean, Bob had to catch up. We shot everything we could without the shark. We substitute, and we designed these yellow barrels that I had redesigned the boat, and the barrels represented the shark. So you see the barrels coming, and you say, "Well, there's a shark, is there?" You know. So it made it more suspenseful, you know. And so that's basically the story. That's why it was so difficult, is because the guys were trying to catch up to this time to make the shark when they had a third of the time that they were supposed to have.
But this is really incredible, because it turned out to be an iconic film, and it is very well known to this day.
That's what's a shock to me is we finished the principal photography. There was one shot. Stephen said he wants to go back and start cutting the movie. He said, "Could you direct that sequence?" And it was a little boy getting eaten on the little raft. So it was my first directing gig, and that was sort of fun. Then we came back. We shot stuff in the tank. We used to call it the Esther Williams tank at MGM, with the underwater stuff where the shark attacks the guy in the cage. And we even shot some stuff in my driveway, because some pickup shots that Stephen wanted to do, where they're breaking the boat, and I made a little bit of the hull, and we used a hammer and a hose. And then the really scary shot was the head when it comes out of that hole. And so I built that in my garage, and we used the editor's swimming pool, and we actually stole the head out of the makeup department and got an underwater camera, and we shot that in our pool. And because Stephen said, they had one screening in Texas. He says, I had 4 screens. I think I could get 5 if we could do this. So we did it. The studio didn't even know we were doing it. We just did it on our own, put that scene in, and then we showed it in Lakewood, California, and everybody screamed, when they saw that head. And my fear was the people were going to laugh at the shark, because when we were doing the shark, it would make all sorts of weird sounds with their rams and stuff, and so then after the shots, the crew would all laugh at the shark. And I thought, they're going to laugh, and when the movie came out and they were sitting there and they were screaming and not laughing. So what happened was, then the studio realized, oh my God, maybe we have a big hit here. They didn't realize it. They almost canceled the movie 4 times because there was so much trouble. And they went back. Yeah, and then they went back and they said, we got to make this a big release. So they released it in 450 theaters. Today they do 4,000. But that was the first big summer release of 450 theaters. And we were shocked. We were shocked that there were just lines of people to go see the movie,
Well, I've got to tell you.
That's it, it goes
I think
on,
it was so realistic that you had people scared to death to go in the ocean for a long time. And,
Rebecca, this is what's so weird is after that, I did Jaws 2 as a associate producer, production designer, and they fired the first director, and I brought in the second director, and I directed 100 Days of Second Unit, and then I went on and I directed Jaws 3D, which was really difficult because it was 3D and they had old cameras and we had to make new cameras. But in any case, time went by, and it wasn't until probably the beginning of this century I was at a reunion for Jaws, and people would say, you should sell your storyboard. You should get online and do all this stuff now. And so I started doing that, and I started doing these shows. And I was shocked at these shows that these kids were like 10, 12 years old, and, oh, could you sign this and sign the poster? And I said, God, you weren't even born. Your parents weren't born when we did this movie. And they were, so I realized it went from generations
Yes.
of people that still liked the movie. And that was
Yes.
a big shock to me, you know?
Yes, I grew up in Southern California, not too long. I was born, but my younger days in hitting Santa Monica Beach, somewhere around 8 to 10, 1978-ish, 79, 80. I mean, I remember this, and it was a big deal. And this has been something that it carries from generation to generation. What you did is absolutely it is legendary, it is iconic, it has been around, and it will continue. I mean, it is a film that is just part of the major motion picture industry. And there are some that you remember, but when someone just says one word, Jaws, they know. And there's a visual that comes with it, and you're the man that created that and did it. And this is absolutely amazing. You have a lot that you have behind you and a lot in front of you as well. I'm really excited, and I want to congratulate you on your Lifetime Achievement Award that you are getting. This is absolutely something that is well-deserved, along with the other awards that you've already been given. But gosh, Joe, I am really excited about all the things that you've done, and I know that there's more that you're getting ready to present. I want to share with the audience too, that they can catch a lot of the information that you've shared with them about the production aspect in Joe Alves' Designing Jaws, and also going to your website at joealvesmovieart.com. And I want to thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, good. I'm hope I didn't overtalk the Jaws thing, but.
Oh, not at all. I'm really excited. In fact, I think that there is so much more that I want to learn about the things that you've done, things with Close Encounters, even more. A lot of the other sets that you've done, things that you've accomplished. I think that the audience would love to hear that as well, because really, a lot of times we talk with celebrities about things behind the scenes, but really, ultimately, Joe, you're the one that created the behind the scenes, and that to me is very fascinating. So I would like to invite you to come back soon.
All right. Well, yes. Thank you. You know, obviously my next picture with Stephen was Close Encounters, and that's another story. But there's also a lot of pictures that you work on just as hard that nobody remembers. But that's the movie business, you know. You can have a big success, and then all you're thinking about is getting the next job, and hopefully the next picture will be a success too. And sometimes you work really hard and they open and they close, you know, and that's sort of the movie world.
That's true. And it's like that in a lot of professions. And sometimes they say you're only as good as your last whatever.
Yeah.
But you, Joe, have made a name for yourself, and you're not just as good as your last whatever. You have so many wonderful things. You've got 18 credits to your name, an Oscar. You now have your Lifetime Achievement Award. You are an incredible man. I know
I didn't get an Oscar. I got 2 nominations.
Yes.
I did get a British Academy Award, though. So.
And I'm really excited. And thank you so much for being with us today.
All right. Thank you for inviting me.
And I want to thank all of you for tuning into Rebecca Sounds Reveille. I ask that you share this with your friends, your family, your coworkers, those that you're close to and those that you're not. And you can catch us again next week. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome to Rebecca Sounds Reveille. I am really excited because I have somebody who's got such a diverse background and has joined the two together to create something that is really going to make your world rock. Today with me, Sarah Katz, whose work in cybersecurity has been joined with her penmanship. Yes, you will want to know a little bit more about her upcoming book called Apex 5. It is something that I could tell you a whole lot about, but there's no one who could share the passion other than the author herself. And I would like to bring her right now to the show so that she can share with you what she has to really inspire and bring some creativity to your mind. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
I am really excited to have you because there's a couple of things that you and I have in common. And one is the cybersecurity, because that's investigative. And the other thing is both of us are authors. But the thing is, you've taken the two and joined them together and merged them to create something absolutely phenomenal. And I'm wondering how you managed to do that.
Well, that's a good question. So I've been involved in politics and security for almost the past 10 years through education and work. And I've been writing fiction since I was about 8 years old. So I combine the two as passions.
This is pretty neat. So tell me a little bit about how you work in the cybersecurity world. This is really an intense field, and it is something that is very much in demand, and it is much needed, and there's not enough people who are involved in that area right now.
That is correct. I pivoted into the cybersecurity arena following an undergraduate degree in international relations and a graduate degree in counterterrorism. So I've always been pretty security oriented, but I moved specifically into cybersecurity following work at Facebook, wherein I was a content moderator. So we saw a lot of crazy content that you would never expected to see shared on Facebook. So that really increased my interest in and passion for the technological aspect of security, especially since I live in the Silicon Valley and I've grown up here. So you kind of can't really escape the thrall of technology, if you will.
That's true. Not in the Silicon Valley, you can't. Everything is really technological there. And what's really fascinating is that I think you've hit upon a couple of good points that we overlook, because we look on the entertainment value and the personal connections on social media, and we don't realize how much risk is involved. And on your side, as someone that was reviewing things to ensure the safety of those that are enjoying the privileges of social media, you're over here seeing some things that I'm sure were pretty shocking when you first got involved.
Yes, absolutely. I saw some quite disturbing material.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that this is fantastic, because in the day and age that we live in a free society in our world here in the United States, where we really have a lot of rights, where we can speak freely, get on the internet, kind of do our thing. There's a lot of things from, like you're talking about, counterterrorism, terrorism, to trafficking, anywhere from trafficking drugs to child trafficking to sex trafficking, to the whole gamut of things. And then some, and we tend to not realize how many risks that are involved when it comes to just the internet. So I think that is fantastic what you're doing. I like that you're an expert in this field and that you do this every day to protect us. And I want to thank you so much for doing that.
Well, thank you.
And I want to thank you for taking the opportunity to merge this into something so creative and allow your juices to flow into your new book, Apex 5, which is something that I want you to share with the audience, because this is so incredibly ingenious with what you've done.
Thank you. So Apex 5 in a nutshell touches on a prospective future Earth in which humanity has separated into 5 distinct nations. Each nation has evolved around each of 5 colossal megastructures. The origin of these structures is unknown. And it's really a story of evolution, both human and technological, and exploring how humans should never play God, because really it never ends well.
And isn't that so true? When humans try to take something into their own hands that is so natural and change it, it just doesn't ever come out the way it should.
Exactly.
So this is pretty neat. How long did this take from idea to the whole storyline coming to fruition? Because for many writers, some of these things can take many years.
Sure. So I've technically been brainstorming the plot of Apex 5 and some of the characters for about 15 years. So it was a long time in the making. It was a long time in the making. That being said, the actual first draft took only about 4 months to write, but there were probably about a year and a half of edits before it got to where it is now.
You know, it's so funny because people don't realize how long editing takes, because you've got to go back and reread it, and you've got to go back and
takes longer than writing the book sometimes. Yeah.
And then even when you go back and you're editing, because you're looking for not only spell check and grammar, but then you'll reread it and you want to make sure that that sentence really conveys what you want it to convey the right way, at the right time, with the right emotion and all of that. And you're really delivering it in Apex 5. And so you've got more, though, because with 15 years of this idea just developing, it can't just stop right in one book.
Oh, no. It's going to extend to at least 3 books in total.
See, this is fantastic. A trilogy, a minimum of a trilogy. This is awesome. And so we may be looking at the next mega movie here and what you have going. But let me ask you, too, how difficult is it to keep track of different worlds and characters that are going on with all of that?
So that's a really good question. In the universe of Apex 5, it is technically Earth, but it's quite post-apocalyptic. So humankind has more or less completely restarted. And in that sense, it is a whole new unique world. And there are a lot of details that world builders have to keep track of, like a time system, different languages.
Okay.
Weather patterns, if they're different, and if certain things are different about either the foreign planet you're dealing with, or in the case of Apex 5, a future Earth, for instance, the planet no longer has one moon. It has like has kind of like a ring of orbiting asteroids that are kind of broken apart and stuck in our orbit. So it looks a lot different from the night sky. Yeah. The night sky looks a lot different. And I mean, of course, it's not, obviously, visually it would look pretty neat, but my shtick is there always has to be like a scientific explanation for things. Like, it's not just up there because it looks pretty. It's up there because the apocalypse that happened kind of changed our orbit.
Oh, so, and it placed these pieces there.
Yes.
And okay, I'm following this, and I'm also thinking about how this could play out down the road. And don't give any details, because we definitely want the audience to get a copy of your book and be able to read for themselves. And it's kind of like a cliffhanger here, because I'm thinking about different things about how these could come to the earth. Anyway, I mean, this is what's really cool about this, Sarah, is that it's just talking about it, allowing my mind to imagine things. And oftentimes we get so caught up in our day-to-day adult world, we forget to imagine.
Absolutely.
And we don't have fun anymore.
Yeah.
So this is awesome. This is really neat. So now tell me too, you have already been on exhibition with your book in a couple of different places. Can you share with the audience a little bit about that as well?
So Comic-Con San Diego 2018, I was only able to advertise. Unfortunately, I did not attend in person. WorldCon 76, so last August, I exhibited in person. I had a table, and I had a lot of fun with my table partner exhibiting her book, and it was a really great process. The author of the Game of Thrones series, George R. R. Martin, was there, and there were a lot of other neat folks there too. So it was a great experience, amazing networking experience. Also really lucrative for promoting your book in a way that doesn't involve potentially spamming online users with links. Working in cybersecurity, I definitely understand the risk of that. You're going to get yourself blocked by a lot of people very quickly. So physical conventions are a stellar promotional method if you're trying to avoid getting blocked and just coming off as noise, really. So, and I will be exhibiting again at Silicon Valley Comic-Con this coming August. So I'm really excited about that.
This is really exciting. You have a lot of really good upcoming things in line specifically from your book, and all conjoined with your writing and your ideas from your childhood into now that have been in development, also combined with your cybersecurity. This is pretty phenomenal. A lot of people don't take their current work and bridge what's going on, and this is something that you're doing. You're doing it very, very well. So I'm excited to see not only your current work, but what's coming in your at least trilogy. Tell me more about some of the other work that you've done, because you've been writing for a long time.
Sure. So my first manuscript that was novel length was a historical fiction magical realism project that I wrote my senior year of high school. And
I love it.
It takes place during the post-World War I Greco-Turkish conflict, and it follows two sisters in Greece. And the younger sister starts to receive visits from a mysterious person who identifies as the Greek god Hermes. And he keeps bestowing messages on her, and she's just kind of trying to make sense of that. So it was definitely an experiment in magical realism. Other than that, during college, and graduate school, I mainly focused on op-ed pieces and academic papers, specifically to do with international relations and counterterrorism. Mm-hmm. I've also written and performed some stand-up comedy as well. So I really just like writing. Also, short fiction is a great way to keep the juices flowing.
This is true.
Yeah, when you don't necessarily have the time to dedicate to pursuing your longer term projects. It's a great way to keep the juices flowing.
That is true. And it's so funny because a lot of times people will say, I've got writer's block and I can't think of anything, but you want to keep moving, keep your brain active. And that way, like you said, when the juices are flowing, you just stay creative. And exactly. And even if you maneuver from one thing for a little while, when your creativity is constant, you'll get something and it'll just come right back to it, and it'll be pretty quick. And so, and I had something that happened. I'm a writer as well, and I have a passion for it. I always have. I love the English language. I love the way that we can be able to do so many things with our language.
Yes.
And what's really neat about it is, you can take the same sentence and from intonation, inflection, to italics, to, just the way you place word placement. There's so many things that you can do to make words jump, pop, sizzle, just all of those things, right? I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And so when you are thinking about those things and in terms of putting them into practice with other things, the creativity can really flow in a lot of areas of your life. And I hadn't had something happened to me for a long time, but something did the other day. And that was, I woke up the other day at 2:00 in the morning with an idea. And I said, get your pencil, get your pen, and start writing. None of the typing on the keyboard thing. Don't do this. You write it down with, on the paper, old school method. And because sometimes that sticks, and that really helps actually make other things flow too. I don't know what the brain out through the hand connection is, but it works. So it's pretty neat, and it's amazing that you mention that today, because often we fail to think about continuing to do that. And I'm a creative person, much like you are. You and I share some of these things, and often we don't think about the two connecting at all. Right. And it's pretty neat. I want to hear too a little bit about your stand-up comedy.
Oh. So that really just came about as the result of a bunch of instances, often frustrating instances in real life that I felt others could relate to. So
I love it.
Yeah, like it started around like traffic inconveniences, and then kind of spreads just some ethnic humor, because I come from a Jewish family and I work with a lot of Indian coworkers. So I really feel like there's a lot of, I don't know, sometimes there is just misunderstandings that happen.
Sure.
Between different cultures, and that can be funny.
It can be funny, and oftentimes we, in the world we live in, sometimes we've gotten too uptight about things because we're just looking at the surface thing instead of realizing some of these are just because we don't understand. And like you said, so I think that that's pretty refreshing, and it's really nice that you are able to take a step back and really lighten the load on these things. And I think part of that has to do with your creativity, but frustration leads us to creativity, like the invention of the wheel. So I am really excited that you have been on the show today. I'm really excited about your book, your upcoming books, and a lot of the other things that you have going. Can you share with the audience how they can get a copy of your current book, and also where they can connect with you so that they can follow what you're doing and keep watch with where this is going? Because I think that this is going to be a biggie.
Absolutely. Thank you. So the book can be purchased on Amazon in Kindle or paperback format. And the title, again, is Apex 5. And it can also be purchased via my website at www.authorSarahKatz.com. And you can either follow me on Facebook. Well, actually not either. You can follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook is just Author Sarah Katz, and Twitter is at Author Sarah Katz. So it's all some flavor of Author Sarah Katz.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And I want to thank you so much for being with us today and sharing what you've got going on. This is really exciting, and I'm really glad to share how much you can bridge not only the work that you do, but that with the passion that you have to create something that helps you move forward in the direction that you want to go. So thank you for being with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Mm-hmm. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in to another episode of Rebecca Sounds Reveille. I am really excited about Sarah Katz. She's got a lot going on that you need to kind of check out. So author Sarah Katz, check her out on Facebook, Twitter, see what she's got going on. There's some things to follow here, and possibly a trilogy that might be hopefully getting picked up at some point and hitting the big screen.